Find more questions and study at your own pace on our website. The link will be in the description. Let's get started. Question 1. You manage code by using GitHub. You plan to ensure that all GitHub actions are validated by a security team. You create a branch protection rule requiring that code changes be reviewed by code owners. You need to create the code owner's file. Where should you create the file? Option A, GitHub/actions. Option B, GitHub dot. Option C, git/dot. Option D, GitHub/workflows/. The answer is option B. To use a code owner's file in GitHub, you need to create it in the root docs/ or .github/ directory of the repository. This ensures that the file can be recognized and processed by GitHub to enforce code ownership rules. Creating it in the .github/ directory is a common practice as it groups configuration files together. Question 2. You are integrating Azure Pipelines and Microsoft Teams. You install the Azure Pipelines app in Microsoft Teams. You have an Azure DevOps organization named Contoso that contains a project named Project 1. You subscribe to Project 1 in Microsoft Teams. You need to ensure that you only receive events about failed builds in Microsoft Teams. What should you do first? Option A. From Microsoft Teams, run at Azure Pipelines, subscribe https://dev.azure.com/contoso/project1. Option B. From Azure Pipelines, add a publish build artifacts task to Project 1. Option C. From Microsoft Teams, run at Azure Pipelines subscriptions. Option D. From Azure Pipelines, enable continuous integration for Project 1. The answer is option C. To ensure that you only receive events about failed builds in Microsoft Teams after subscribing to a project, you need to manage your subscriptions. This can be done by running the @Azure Pipelines subscriptions command in Microsoft Teams. This allows you to view all current subscriptions, modify existing ones, and apply the necessary filters to only get notifications for failed build events. Question 3. Your company uses Azure DevOps and Microsoft Azure Active Directory, part of Microsoft Entra. Only users who have accounts in Azure AD can access the Azure DevOps environment. You need to ensure that only devices that are connected to the on-premises network can access the Azure DevOps environment. What should you do? Option A. Assign the stakeholder access level to all users. Option B. In Azure DevOps, configure security and project settings. Option C. In Azure AD, configure conditional access. Option D. In Azure AD, configure risky sign-ins. The answer is option C. To ensure that only devices connected to the on-premises network can access the Azure DevOps environment, you should configure conditional access in Azure AD. Conditional access policies allow you to set specific conditions, such as requiring users to be on a trusted network before granting access to resources. This ensures that only users on devices connected to the on-premises network can access Azure DevOps. Question 4. You have a project in Azure DevOps named Project 1 that contains a Kanban board named Board 1. You create a Microsoft Teams channel and add the Azure Boards app to the channel. You need to ensure that users can create work items in Board 1 from Microsoft Teams. Which command should you run? Option A, add Azure Boards subscriptions. Option B, add Azure Boards create. Option C, add Azure Boards sign in. Option D, add Azure Boards link. The answer is option B. To achieve the requirement of creating work items in Board 1 from Microsoft Teams, the correct command to use is at Azure Boards create. This specific command directly allows users to create new work items within the linked Azure Boards project. The other options such as subscriptions, sign-in, and link are not aimed at creating work items. They are used for setting up and linking the necessary services and configurations. Question 5. You have a project in Azure DevOps. You need to push notifications about pull requests to a Microsoft Teams channel. The solution must minimize development effort. What should you do? Option A, install the Azure Pipelines app for Teams and configure a subscription to receive notifications in the channel. Option B, use Azure Automation to connect to the Azure DevOps REST API and send messages to Teams. Option C, install the Azure Repos app for Teams and configure a subscription to receive notifications in the channel. Option D, use an Azure function to connect to the Azure DevOps REST API and send messages to teams. The answer is option C, to push notifications about pull requests to a Microsoft Teams channel with minimal development effort. Install the Azure Repos app for Teams and configure a subscription to receive notifications in the channel. This straightforward solution enables monitoring of repositories and notifications for pull request events without needing additional coding or complex setup. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to check out our website where you can find more questions for this exam. The link will be in the description. Thank you for watching and good luck on your exams.